feel free to experiment and figure out your own rules, but you'll find out the God rules are the best. So is everything God's fault? And again, this is kind of inspired by a conversation between me and you, but also stuff I've been watching from Ricky Gervais, where he said, like, does God, if everything is in God's control, then that means God is the one who gives aids to children in Africa. And again, I'm going to try to make my videos a little bit popular. I'm going to stick his video before I even start talking on the edited version, and maybe more people will watch it and kind of understand what I'm talking about there as well. But anyway, so the short answer, where is my short answer? Let's copy paste that. Everything's within a plan that allows choice. Okay, so you do have free will. Okay, if there wasn't free will, there wouldn't be such a thing as good or bad. How can there be anything that's good if everything you had to do was dictated by God? That means, it's like God says, give that sweet to that poor kid, otherwise I'll kill you. Then it's not actually kindness to give sweet to that kid. It's like you were forced to. So free will is necessity for good and bad to happen. And to give a short version of why we're, according to religion, why we're even here, or at least in Islam, it's this never-ending journey towards beauty. And beauty, the most meaningful sense of beauty is good action rather than, your good looks, which are only sort of a weird chemical reaction you get that is ingrained in your biology. Like, why is that nose really good looking? It's because somehow it's imprinted in your biology. It's not really what it's not an amazing idea of what beauty is, right? So everything's within there's a plan, and there's space for you, there's wiggle room for you to misbehave within that plan. But I was talking to Salim earlier on, and I'm not sure what Salim's opinion is, but he was watching a bit of Star Wars, and I'm a big fan of Star Wars, so generally I agree, but I don't take it as kind of like I don't take the words of Yoda as exact rules to live by, but quite close. And somebody, either Yoda or somebody quite as wise as Yoda, might have said something along the lines of, everything is as it should be. Now, I did try to look for the quote. I couldn't find it. Who said it? Which Jedi said it? Was he dying?
It was the knights. It was the knights of the Kyber crystal. Is it the Kyber crystal? Star Wars fans will know what I'm talking about.
Okay.
But the knights of the Kyber crystal, one of them was a believer, and he said, "The Force is around. I am part of the Force, and the Force is with me." He also said that everything is as it should be, and it relates to a word that's quite often used by lots of Muslims called mashallah. It means by the grace of God, or in my translation of it is everything is as Allah wills it. So if you forgive me, just indulge me for a moment.
Sure.
So the rule is everything God's fault? Yes, in that there are rules of nature, there's rules of matter, there's rules of science, where Islam is the word of God, science is the work of God, and obviously directed evolution forms part of that. So what I'm saying is that forget if God exists, we're well past that. God is super conscious. He is more than aware, and beyond the number of stars times intelligent than you and I. He's active, he's alive, he's hearing, he's listening to us. So every leaf that drops, every creature that gets fed, insect in the ground, God knows it. The superconscious universe knows it. So you're on, you know, when we're playing these video games, you're on a kind of a directed path. Yeah, you can go over here and shoot some people and go over there and play some games, but you cannot defy the laws of gravity. You cannot defy the laws of matter. So you are on rails, what they call. We're on rails. There's a limit to what we can do. We can't just defy gravity and just walk into the air. And yeah, so everything is as as Allah wills it, or as God wills it, as the universe wills it. Whatever your name of God is, the one superpower that's running the show, and you know, and is active, and everything is as.
That's pretty rude, Cat. Do you see Salim sticking his backside up to the camera? Gosh, have some respect. Anyway, I'm still doing it. He's ignoring me. She's ignoring
Put
me.
it down. Put it
I think
down.
I think she's making a point now to ignore me. Or is it she or he?
She.
See, how did I know? How did I know? 50-50. Eh? Anyway, so I think the thing we were disagreeing with, because I like to find some point of disagreement, Salim, on the phone the other day, was you were saying is
Hold on. Did you say? Are you saying? You're saying no, everything's not God's fault. I'm saying yes, it is.
No, I'm trying to find the point of disagreement. And the point of disagreement when we were on the phone was you were saying one thing is this is quite subtle, right? I'm agreeing with you that everything is God's fault, right? Because God has control, he can allow everything. But is everything as it should be is another question, like, or as God would like it, or so God would like you to do good things. Okay, God would like people, little kids, not to have AIDS, but their parents made certain decisions, you know, often extramarital affairs and stuff like that, right? Or also the other issues. Okay, I'm not saying that's the only way, but that's the general cause for AIDS, right? So God would like you to be the best as you can, but gives the opportunity not to. So there are rails, but there's like amongst those rails is like turn right or turn left. You choose. Good or bad, you choose. So, but God allows those two options. So God is in control of the two options. God created those two options, but you still get to choose them. So what I mean to say is that if we simply, or maybe if we're over simplistic, then we're basically going to end up insulting God, because when Ricky Gervais quite legitimately says, if everything is God's fault, then giving AIDS to innocent children is also God's fault. And we just say, yeah, that's fine. We shouldn't be too comfortable with that. We should at least try to explain it. Because if I said, Salim, have you been giving AIDS to little children again? And you said, yeah, I'm quite, yeah. And I'll be like, oh, that's great. Well done, Salim. No, you wouldn't. So we should also have that kind of feeling to fight for God, as it were, even though God doesn't need us, but like enough respect for God to say, you know what, you know, God has given and made an amazing world, giving loads of opportunity to do amazing, beautiful things. And so, and then you focus on this one bad thing or these few bad things, you know, Ricky Gervais, you're focusing on like bad things that are result of human action, okay, who chose to, out of all the amazing, beautiful things you could do, they did that, right? Maybe you shouldn't just blame God, but like kind of look to human beings to fix their behavior, is an answer I'd give.
So David Attenborough said he didn't believe in God because of congenital defects. So these are children that are born because of genetic, you know, whether it's sickle cell anemia or other, you know, but you're born with defects. But on the other hand, God says in the Quran that look around, you won't find any flaws in creation. So how do you, you know, what would you say to David?
Right, so that's interesting. So flaws in creation. So one thing is that this is hard to prove, but this is what I've heard, and it makes some sense, is that the flaws, you can have all sorts of, for example, if you, after Hiroshima, for example, the nuclear bomb, many generations had all sorts of defects in their children. And if you take all sorts of terrible drugs or bad food, it can affect what happens to your generations down the line. And so there's a number of issues with that. Is like, oh, that's a bit unfair. Why should somebody else be affected by your actions? Well, no man is an island. We're all affecting each other, and it's part of kind of the dynamics of what makes us, like, if we only harmed ourselves and we didn't harm other people, then nobody else would make us accountable. Like you know, like, I don't know if a child would ever say, why did you mess up my life by taking X, Y, and Z, or not looking into your actions. So that could be one answer. We don't know the full extent of science, but we do know that on the whole, things are pretty immaculately designed. I mean, incredible. So pretty immaculate design. That's such an underestimate of how amazing things are. And so for, let's say, what's his name, Richard Attenborough, after being the guy who looks at all the amazing things he does more than we do, okay, and to look at all of that, and then he sees one black dot on a massive white piece of paper, and he just focuses on that black dot and says, right, I don't believe in God because of that. I mean, that's just completely dishonest. It's like, first of all, he knows better than a lot of people how amazing and how intricate and how fantastically designed everything is. And he knows that if he sees a robot coming out of a factory, he knows that somebody made that. So he knows that things are being created and amazingly designed, but he takes the one opportunity to ignore God's design and says, look, that thing that I don't really understand because I'm not a scientist, I don't fully understand it, and I claim that is a fault in the design. That's pretty lame.
Okay, interesting response. So
yeah,
mutations in the DNA result in survival of the fittest in the Darwin's theory. I mean, obviously we believe in directed evolution, but back to mutations in DNA. For example, my parents might have diabetes, and then I get past diabetes because it's genetic, it's hereditary.
to some extent, yeah.
And so there are many things that are passed on, and eye color and so on. But all I would say is that if I get diabetes or if I have congenital defects, it's not a flaw. It's part of the plan.
Yeah, it's pretty hard for me, that's pretty hard to explain because I can't say I know the full design of everything. All I know is that when I do look at the intricate design of things generally, so I'm
I was just
impressed
on
by
the
it.
bell curve. On the bell curve of
Yeah.
creation,
Yeah.
there will always, most people are in the middle, but there will be the extremities of the bell curve where people will have obscure and not flaws, but that's where variety takes place. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you, Jazakallah.